Stuckey, and we're going to be starting our critique of the magazine spreads. Now, one of the things that is a little bit frustrating to me is I just did the entire critique and then found out that it didn't record properly. And so you're actually listening to this a second time from me, I guess. It's your first time listening to it, but it's the second time I've done it today. As you know, I'm flying out to Las Vegas in a few minutes today, and so I'm going to have to make this fairly short. But I'm going to show you a few things that stood out to me in the first time I created the critique this morning, and we'll go from there. Okay? So first of all, let's talk about the requirements. Some of the things that you need to do is we want to have at least 2 images. You need to have at least 3 pages with 1 spread, which is 2 pages opened up. We're going to be looking for tasteful typography. Basically, defined as that means you're only using 2 typefaces in the entire project, okay? Possibly a third if you're going to make your title a little bit decorative. I will allow that, but really, when you think about it, and when you look at a magazine article, you're going to find that the title is in 1 typeface, and any subtitles would be in that same typeface, and then all of your text will be in a contrasting typeface. So let's be thinking about that. And also, we're going to be looking for no hyphens. Remember, in your worksheet, you learned how to do away with hyphens, and so that's one thing we'll be looking for. Also, there's left-right alignments, justifications, there's kerning settings, leading settings. You can really take this about as far as you want to go, and there's a lot to learn and a lot to do in a magazine article, and I realize this is a first for all of you. So I'm going to look quickly and share a few insights that I've had, and then I'm going to create about a 5-minute video in InDesign showing you a couple of the things that I recommended in here. So I recommend you watch this entire video and apply the things I say to you, to your piece, as well as to your classmates. Look at what I have to say about their pieces and apply it to yours as well. The goal is that by Saturday, when you submit the final draft, that I can tell that there's been improvements made. So let's look at the first one, finding joy through loving service. One of the things that I would recommend here is notice that we have this, the very last line on this page is only 1 line long. I would bump that to the next page. We want to avoid widows and orphans. Widows and orphans are one-liners at the end of a page or at the top of a page. You don't want to have those. This looks really good. I love the joy and service contrast with the title. And then we have this nice typeface for everything else, for all of the text. And let's look at the second and third page really quick. Now we have the gospel is simple, love one another. Notice the contrast and how that helps it flow. You can immediately see where those are. Now, one thing that I see is we have brought in another typeface for the pull-out quote. Let's make that the same as one of the other 2 typefaces, but let's not introduce a third typeface into the piece. Maybe it's the same as the joy and service. We'll look for just a minute. Yeah, it looks like it could possibly be that. And so what I would recommend is really we want to stick with the 2. So maybe we make that either the same as all of your regular text or as your subtitles. But let's try to avoid that. We do need to bring in a second image into this piece. Actually, we did. It's right here where we have the 3rd page with the picture of these 2 young ladies. And I like that we've started this text wrap on the left. The thing I'd recommend is that we continue on the right. Notice the margin over here is a little bit tighter than the margin over here on the left. So we just need a little bit of breathing space. And I'll try and show that in my video, how you can do that. One of the things, let's move on to Julian Mathis, where love, justice, and mercy meet. Now, one of the things that I notice immediately in here is the decorative approach to this, and I like what you've done. However, it's just a little bit confusing, where love is a typeface, justice is a typeface, mercy is a typeface, and then wherein meet is its own typeface. So already we've immediately started with, it looks like 4 different typefaces, and then we still have our text. So I would really see what we could do about simplifying that. Probably changing love, justice, and mercy all to the same typeface. We have a beautiful picture of the falls in Yellowstone here. It's a very busy picture, and that's fine, but it makes it really hard to read text, and it's just a little bit distracting on it because you have shadows and highlights here. It makes it hard to know what color could my text be to make it fit. And so a couple of things that I would recommend is you've created this kind of text box, it looks like around there, that's kind of a shadow. You could make that a little bit darker, but still opaque so the picture shows through, or you can decrease the opacity of the image in the back. And that's going to really help add some contrast in there, I guess. Now, let's look at the next page. We have this great opportunity for some text wrapping along this mountain, and I can see that you've started it, but let's continue it down here. How do you do that, do you say? Because there's no text down there, the talk isn't long enough. Well, a couple of the things that we can do here is, one, let's add a space between every single paragraph and start bumping things down. That might be too much space, and that's where you might have to do some adjusting a little bit. We can make the subtitles a little bit smaller. The pull-out text can be a little bit smaller. One of the things also that I'm just a little bit, that I guess that brings up a question is, how does the blue or purple color of these subtitles and pull-out text connect to this piece? Where else do we see it? Is it shown anywhere else? I don't think it is. Yeah, it's used on the title, where and meet, but maybe that's where we could actually make it green. Maybe we use our eyedropper tool and pull a sample out of the mountain scene here so it kind of ties in and becomes a little more earthy in approach. Let's go ahead and move to the next here. We have choose goodness and joy, and then this orange text. So the first thing I see here is we have kind of this gold color and this green color and then the orange color. And that's just a little bit confusing. I don't see a connection there. I don't know where things are connecting. So we want things to be consistent. So I would pick one of those colors and stick with it, and maybe a contrasting for the ampersand. Here we have gold, green, black, and dark orange. The alignment looks really nice on this. Here we have a left and right justification. Good work there. I don't think you need to underline your subtitle. Good contrast doesn't have to be added with an underline or a box or anything like that. If you use a good contrasting typeface, you don't have to emphasize it with other features. Here we have the testimony of the apostles. The title's in kind of a slab serif, and then our text is in a simple serif, it looks like to me. Looks nice. It's a little bit busy. I wonder if we could bring things down a little bit, bring the title down below and bump the text down a little bit and then bleed it into the next pages. I'm not completely sure I understand the red circle with the Jesus Christ, the Son of God over here, but I'm sure it has a purpose. So we'll be looking to find out what that is. Overall, the first two pages or the first one page of each of these look really good, but obviously we need to see more to know where we're going. And so we'll be expecting to see more in this submission later this week. Managing negative emotions. Here we're off to a great start. I like the simplicity that we see here. The one thing though that I'm noticing is it's all sans serif. Let's add in some contrasting here, either going with a really thin sans serif and a really thick sans serif, or adding in a serif somewhere. We have this text wrapping kind of going around here. I wonder if we could come in a little bit closer to the guy's, kind of the ribs in his leg a little bit. See if that would help a tiny bit. It might not. It's something that you kind of experiment with. And then we have our list. We have our first subtitle, take time for negative feelings, feel them and observe them. I would actually then push enter and make that an actual subtitle, not actually just a bolded first sentence of a paragraph. And then really do that with your second and third subtitles as well, and I think it will turn out really nice looking. Here we have the first 2 pages, how to be productive. And this is off to a great start. It really does remind me of an illustrated magazine spread that we see here. I like the pull-out quote. The number one thing that stands out to me here is that everything is center aligned, all of your text. I would recommend that we make it left aligned or right aligned, but don't do center alignment. It creates too much symmetry. It's something that we don't want in design. And it's going to help really clean this up. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised when you left align it, what you see. And then we make sure that nothing is hyphenated as well. And that's going to really help as well on there. Let's look at the second page. We have these 6 circles, but the thing that I see here is inconsistency. Circle sizes are different, space between, text placement, all of these things are inconsistent. I think it would be much better to make this a 2-column page with a list. Make your title or your subtitle of each of these one font, and then put your text in a contrasting typeface. And do that throughout the entire image. Bring in a photograph to demonstrate some of this besides just the background in here. And I think that will look really nice. Play around a little bit, do some experimenting, and let's move on to the next. We have the Welcome to the Eagle Mountain Second Ward Relief Society. Now, one of the things that I notice about this is we're going through a lot of different typefaces. We start out with Welcome to the Eagle Mountain Second Ward, Relief Society in a script font, the purpose of Relief Society in a sans serif kind of bold, larger font, and then the text in a font. We have a smaller font right here. This pull-out quote is in another font. And when we come down here, we even bring in some more fonts and sizes, and it's just very inconsistent in the typography. So that would be the first recommendation that I would say is, let's choose 2 typefaces for this entire article. Make your title and your subtitles all one of them and all of your text the other. Keep the sizes consistent and lay it out. Let's see a little bit of text wrapping added into these. Maybe text wrapping around this picture of the temple rather than over top of the temple. Placing text in front of an image is very challenging to make it look good. And so that would be something that I would strongly recommend seeing what you could do about. Let's move on to the next. We have this: young women can use social media to share goodness with this gold hashtag. Where did that gold come from, folks? Right, it's from the sweater. I like that. Do that often. Use your eyedropper tool and sample colors from your pictures and use it to create a color scheme. Notice a glorious message here. It's in kind of a dark green. It looks like it came from the leather of the scriptures. I would keep that, or I would make it the gold color. I like the gold and the green, but I also like the gold alone. Let's look at the second and third page. Notice again, they're applied in here. Notice the alignment in here. Everything looks very nice. We see no hyphens. We see the contrast. We have the serif and the sans serif typefaces. We have nice imagery. One thing that I would recommend is maybe we break the barrier of the column here and wrap just along the arm with the text, just so it kind of follows that shape. That might be a fun approach. See what you think. It might make it feel too crowded. One thing I wonder is whether we want the title overlapping the picture. I like it. It looks good. But I wonder how it'd look if it wasn't. Maybe it'd be too small. Play around a little bit, do some experimenting, and let's see what we can do. But very nice job on this piece. For the strength of youth, we have this picture here. And one of the things that I wonder is if we couldn't actually just go straight across with the title. Right now, I see a lot of symmetry here, but kind of opposite. Notice that in the top half, we have all of our text on the left side. On the bottom half, we have all of our text on the right side. What if we broke that barrier and went all the way across on the top? And maybe even a couple columns on the bottom half. I don't know. Something to play with, something to experiment. One of the things that I would recommend is you've used for the strength of youth in a serif, and you've put your text in a sans serif, and that's great. But I wonder if we change the words for the and of youth into that same sans serif as the text down here. Just to add a little bit of contrast in the title. And then maybe we use the strength, the serif typeface that is strength for all of your subtitles, which it looks like you've done as we move on. So great job there. A couple of things I'm noticing are we have some strokes around the image. Notice the Christus here has a stroke around it. I would remove that. I would remove the black stroke from this green box as well. Let's see. Yeah, I would say remove the black stroke from the green box and the black stroke from the picture of the Christus. It's off to a great start. Let's remove the hyphens and things will look good. Okay, what do we mean when we testify and say that we know the gospel is true? That's all in a sans serif typeface. And then testimony in kind of a script. Here I see about 4 different typefaces. So again, let's simplify on the typography. See what we can do there. I would remove the black stroke around this text box. And then notice I like the contrasting colors here with kind of that green and this kind of that blue and the dark orange. That creates a great color scheme. And it looks like it's being applied throughout. We have the how do I know in orange. Awesome. Let's look at the next page. Here we bring in the green again on the left and the orange. I like that. I wonder if I like that you kept it white, but I wonder what would happen if maybe we changed it to orange and maybe made the orange bars white. Might add a fun look. Desire, pray, act, share, sacrament. So I'm not sure what that is, where it's coming from, but it's probably applied somewhere in the talk. So just make sure that there's some way of applying and recognizing what are those 5 words? What do they mean? What are they being listed on the side for? What could we do? Well, we actually have our 2 images, so that's fine. I was just going to say, what could we do to add another image in? You might consider still bringing in a 3rd image for this final page, just so it doesn't look quite as busy. But really the main thing here that I'm worried about is the typography. Lots and lots of different fonts here. Lots of hyphens, a few things that can change, make sizes consistent, and I think it will look really nice when it's finished. So here we have some recommendations from somebody else in the class, so I would follow those as well. Let's see about text wrapping around this round image of the scientist. Looks really good. Let's move on to Zoe. Here we have a picture, it looks like to me from Yellowstone Park. Notice that I like the fact that the typography here, notice the artistic approach. Environmental stewardship looks kind of blocky and modern. Environmental concern is definitely a modern approach. And so I like that. I like that we're seeing typefaces that kind of match the mood of the image here. I like this decorative font conservation. And notice how it's applied down here on the next page as well, the creator and creations. Great job there. One of the things that we do need to be thinking about is where can we put our subtitles? Notice it's quite full. And so we might want to consider that. Maybe we decrease the type size a little bit. Maybe we decrease the size of this picture down here in the bottom left a little bit to make the type fit. And then we can do a little bit of text wrapping around it. And also, what could we do about following this angle with our text? What I mean by that is I would take the white selection tool, which is your white arrow, click on the text box, and you'll notice that you'll have 4 anchor points. Take that left top, click on it so it's highlighted, and move it up to the top of the green angle, and do the same on the second column, and actually kind of treat it like a text wrapping on that triangle. Not following the angle with the text, but just the edges of the text. I don't know if that makes sense what I'm trying to say or not. But basically, it would start out fairly skinny at the top and get a little bit wider as we move down. I don't know if you can see my mouse or not as I demonstrate on this. So in my video, I'll try and remember to mention something about that. But the main thing here is we need to bring in some subtitles. The way I would do that would be I would take your slab serif that you've used in your titles and make subtitles out of that. Maybe we even do them in the orange color that we see so richly in this first picture. Notice that we brought the green and the blue over to the second and third page, but we didn't bring the orange in. It's not a requirement, but I like how it looks, and I wonder if that would bring some contrast. It might also not be the type of contrast we want. It may look bad. So use your best judgment on the matter, see what you can do. One other thing that I notice is on the first page, your paragraphs are indented by 2 characters. On the second and third page, all of your paragraphs are indented by about 6 characters. I would make that consistent. I personally recommend not indenting at all, but just adding an extra space in the leading between each of the paragraphs. You don't have much room here to do that, unfortunately, because it is a little bit text heavy. But with a few little tricks like playing with your kerning and your leading, maybe decreasing the font size a tiny bit, and doing some text wrapping, you could actually create some extra space in here to be able to add in those subtitles and so forth. Great job. It's off to a great start. So let's move on. Here we have certain women, and we have a few different typefaces in here. Again, certain women is in one, and then the subtitle is in one, and then the text is in one. So I would probably recommend, in this case, changing it to just 2 typefaces. Keep the certain women text, but then the text that we read, certain women in the Savior's Day, and the capital M, I would keep those the same as the title. I would eliminate that third typeface completely. Let's look at the second page. Here we have our pull-out quote. I hesitate a little bit on the circle border. I don't like creating strokes as barriers. And then down here we have the same kind of strokes, and they're even overlapping the text. I would at least remove that one, but maybe even the bottom. That's up to you. But then changing the subtitles to the same typeface again as the title. We have a lot of colors going on here, and that's it. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It can be a good thing based on your targeting women, and those are probably more feminine colors, which is fine. But I do question, probably, I guess, maybe it's the contrast. We have such dark black on the pink, and I wonder if we could just lighten it up a little bit, or maybe even lighten the pink. It just seems a little bold and kind of jumps out at you. Makes it a little bit hard to focus on. So I wonder whether we lighten the background even more or lighten the text a little bit. This is off to a great start. So do some experimenting, play with your typography as recommended, and I think you'll be great. So let's move on to the next. Here we have the 3 pages. Here we have a lot of text, and I like how it's placed out. We notice that we have all of our columns. We have some text wrapping going on. It's very easy to spot our subtitles. One thing that I wonder is, what could we do here to free up some space on the first page? It's a beautiful picture, and I hate to cover it with so much text. The pro to it is you didn't cover the temple, so I'm okay with it. But I wonder if we could bump the text down a little bit, get rid of this last line, bump it down to the second page so it's not alone. And then I wonder if we went with just pure white for your background. I like the blue gradient that you've added in, but it might be a bit much. It might not be necessary. So play around a little bit with that and see what you think. I like that your text is brown. I like changing text colors on things like this. Dark brown, dark blue can be the black, if you want to say. So play around a little bit, do some experimenting. But overall, this is off to a great start. Yeah, I'm good with that. So I'm going to move on. Here we have a better way to measure myself. I love the simplicity of this one. Notice the serif typefaces for all of the text and the sans serif for the titles and the subtitles. And notice the spacing. We have a missionary's worries, and we have some good space there, and then a paragraph. Also, I like that we have these little circles in here, but they're not so dominant that we can't just read over them. And it's really easy to follow, so great job there. We do need to apply some text wrapping into here somewhere, so maybe you could follow the circle on this second page. Or actually, I guess you kind of do it on your second page. I'm looking at the third page. We could make it a little more dominant in there. Maybe place your text a little more centered vertically in here as well. And then I'd like to see you make a list. And when I say that, you have the list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right here. But when you're working in InDesign, you can actually add a list. And I'll try and demonstrate that in a minute on my second video to you. And what it would do is basically it would indent your second and third line of number 1, and then your second and third line of number 2, and 4, and 5. It would indent those lines so it looked like a listed number or a numbered list. We're off to a great start on that, so great job. Let's look at this next one. Here we have I'm pretty sure this is the Jordan River Temple, and it's fun to see a pumpkin patch in front like that. That's really cool. One of the things that I wonder is if we don't let that picture just bleed off the left and the right and the top, and then keep the title either in the sky or move the title down so it's below the picture, and then bump all of your text down into your second and third pages. You definitely have room to do that. As we look here at the second and third pages, you can see that we could do some text wrapping around the circle. And then we could also do some text wrapping around these shapes and images on the third page. Let's look at that for a minute. Here we have everything in a serif typeface. And again, serif typeface here, which is good. We could increase our margins a little bit around this picture so that our black picture doesn't meet right up with our black text, just to make it a little more readable. But overall, that looks really good. So good work, everybody. We're off to a great start. A couple things to be thinking about is hyphenation, 2 typefaces, at least 2 images, and consistency throughout. Let's see what we can do here, and we'll stop the broadcast.